Marvel Rivals has officially been out for a year now. It's funny to remember how haters would say that the game would be dead by now, that it was an unapologetic copy of Overwatch. And well, not only is Rivals still alive and kicking, but it's still greatly outperforming Overwatch and many other games in the scene, with having twice as many players on Steam alone compared to Overwatch. Though I don't put all my trust on Steam charts, it's usually a good screenshot of what games players are focused on at the time and at the very least on PC. I usually like to look around on YouTube and social media to see which games are being posted more often, and to my own anecdotal evidence, I see way more Rivals videos than Overwatch clips. That said, Rivals hasn't done everything well, and there was a low point in the year that, for a moment, did make it seem like Rivals might have lost its momentum. In general, I'll be going over the good and the bad of Marvel Rivals for its first year. I'm sure I won't remember or cover everything, so feel free to chime in the comments below, especially around Seasons 3 and 4. And while you're there, consider sharing this video around, hitting the hype button if you're on mobile, and subscribing to the channel. Any support is greatly appreciated. The game started with a soft launch, with Season 1 being released later on in January. I'll likely be repeating myself a lot with game balance, so I'll cover Season 0 as my first impressions of the game. I'll just cover my cliff notes, as you can always watch the video I made about the game back then for more detail and laugh at what characters I thought would be more problematic at the time. I honestly was expecting to hate this game. I expected it to rely heavily on its Marvel IP and have bog standard gameplay, the same way that another game called Marvel's Avengers did. Not only was I wrong about that, but gameplay wise it feels like the exact opposite. Someone had a decent idea of what kind of game they wanted to make, and crammed in Marvel characters to fit their roles. It's not to say these characters are drastically different from their counterparts, but there are some abilities that feel out of character, but not so far out of character that you can't turn a blind eye to it. I also wasn't too keen on the game being a third-person shooter. However, this is probably the most natural feeling third-person shooter I've ever played. The maps are designed around it, the character abilities are designed around it, and it all fits like a glove. You really have to go out of your way to put yourself in a spot where the camera can be a bit annoying to deal with, but in regular gameplay, it feels great. I also have to mention how most characters are able to defend themselves against any class. Just because you're playing support doesn't mean you can't deal damage. Some of these characters like Mantis, Ultron, and Adam Warlock are meant to be more aggressive, damage-heavy supports who can win a one-on-one, or at worst, have a way to escape that 1v1. Long story short, I expected Rivals to be another Marvel's Avengers game where the gameplay would be serviceable and surface level. Season 0 showed it was going to be fast-paced, chaotic, heavily reliant on character abilities, and providing enough abilities and firepower for almost every character to stand out on their own. I don't think it's a stretch to call Season 1 as probably the most impactful season of the year. I know that's not a great thing to hear considering it's the very first official season, but we'll get to that. Season 1 would feature the Fantastic Four, starting with Mr. Fantastic and Susan Storm to kick things off, then the Thing and the Human Torch later on. The reason I claim Season 1 as a very impactful season is not just because it released with 4 new characters, but because primarily of Susan Storm. Invisible Woman is still one of the strongest support strategists in the game nearly 1 year later. And it's not to say new characters should always end up being meta, I'm looking at you Overwatch, but they should bring something to the table that makes them worth trying out, even if they become a niche character later on. Pair this with the Thing who literally cannot be moved and at most can only be stunned. Not only that, but also being able to ground players by briefly removing their ability to escape a fight. Over time, he has become less relevant as he tends to get blown up near instantly if used as a solo tank. If you're on a 2-tank team comp, you can put a lot of pressure on the front line and punish dives. Mr. Fantastic was okay at first and did need some buffs, but now he's nearly unkillable. He always played like a pseudo tank and prolonged team fights. Fortunately, he's not so crazy powerful that he wins every fight. He's just much more annoying to play against. As for Human Torch, he did have a brief moment in the sun, and I'd like to keep it that way. The season also gave us a new map set in New York that I liked playing more times than not, and a limited time mode called Clash of Dancing Lions. It was basically soccer or Lucio Ball, but you could only use Star-Lord, Iron Fist, and Black Widow. Overall, the game mode felt slow, but it was still fun to jump into, and played enough times to grab all the rewards from that mode. While Season 1 was loaded, I don't think it was the most fun season. It gave us a peek of what future seasons could look like. The first half of Season 2 was pretty good. We got a new tank, Vanguard, Emma Stone, who was a meta pick as a frontline tank. Being able to be both a poke and brawler tank as well as CC immune at times, it provides a lot of versatility and fits well to most team comps. The new Krakoa map was also a nice addition to the roster. I don't know how Rivals does it, but they find a way to add ultimates and abilities that sound very oppressive on paper, but ends up not being that big of a deal most times. Emma's ultimate being able to basically take the controls away from any opponent who stands in her line of sight for too long sounds like a terrible thing to deal with, and it can be if timed with other ultimates, and we've seen that before with the Groot ult and even with the Thing's ultimate as well. But on its own, Emma's ultimate basically turns into the opponents having to run away and break line of sight for a few seconds. The second half of Season 2, however, was not so great, featuring Ultron as a support strategist and a new map, Arakko, which plays almost polar opposite to Krakoa, with long narrow hallways that make the map feel very one-dimensional. Not only that, but Ultron was also the start of flyer meta. While there were some attempts in the previous seasons such as a team-up with Hulk and Iron Man, it wasn't overly oppressive until Ultron showed up. Going against Storm, Iron Man, Human Torch, and Ultron all on the same team basically meant your team had to either use hit-scan characters or characters who had a better time playing against flyers. I do typically play characters that are good against flyers like Star-Lord and Bucky, but if no one else on my team was going to shoot at any of the three flyers, there's basically not much I could do on my own. And if I wasn't dealing with a team of flyers, I was then dealing with a team of divers. I also have to mention the 3 support meta that has been a very solid strategy since the game was released. In that sense, the game was starting to get annoying and a little bit stale to play, as I either had to shoot at mosquitoes in the air or had to do my best to survive a dive comp, or play a game where no one dies just because there was always a player who had a support ult ready to use. I remember most of my playtime in the back half of Season 2 being in the experimental mode called Digital Duel Grounds. This was an auto battler that was a lot of fun, but also didn't have too much thought put into it. Even when running certain team comps in Duel Grounds that would typically win, you could still end up losing either from luck of the draw, or if a more risky team comp ends up paying off. Even though it wasn't perfect, I did like this new mode, and I also liked that Rivals wasn't going to add limited time modes that were just playing Rivals but different. Make no mistake, that's what most of these limited time modes ended up being, especially with the clone mode, but Duel Grounds, the soccer mode, and zombie modes we got this year were a lot of fun, and I hope to see more of these kind of modes in the future. I'm not going to lie, Season 3 was my least played season. This was because flyer meta was still kind of a thing, but also the new character showcase that kind of made me not want to deal with playing the game at the time. That new character was Phoenix, and funny enough, I've been learning her kit recently and I actually enjoy it. If you're someone who can really play with Hela because of her abilities, you'll probably like Phoenix a lot more. However, this season overall was a lot more lackluster than the other two, featuring only one new game mode being Resource Rumble, which honestly sucked, and the new maps that were based around the Venom comics. The second half of Season 3 added in Blade, and while the character is cool, his kit doesn't really interest me outside of the zombie LTM that was added in the following season. I wish I could provide more personal details about Season 3, but I can't. I didn't really play it, and I was waiting for some more balance changes before jumping back in. Following the trend of not really putting much time into the game, I missed out on most of Season 4. I did remember playing Clone Rumble a few times, but that's about it. Season 4 introduced a new tank, Angela, who was also a flyer. Fortunately, most of her kit is melee based, so she has to get close to really be a threat, which makes her flying a lot less annoying to deal with since she has to close the distance and get in your face. The second half of Season 4 introduced Daredevil. His kit seems to play very similar to Iron Fist, and though he is a strong character right now, there are definitely ways to deal with him. I know dive meta is always annoying, but by this point, there were enough changes to the game's overall balance that, for my experience, made me play against dives less often. It also seemed like everyone got their flyer meta out of their system too. It's as if the game kind of reset itself back to Season 1, with a mostly grounded meta but still very addicting gameplay. Season 4 would also introduce a zombies mode, which is a lot of fun. It also does suffer from the same things as the Duel Grounds mode in Season 2, where you pick cards to upgrade your heroes. But if you just keep picking the same type of card over and over again, that would make you strong enough to beat the hardest difficulty of the game mode on your own. That said, it is typically more of a glass cannon build. So long as you can deal significant damage and have some lifesteal, you can make it work. Season 4 for me was the most fun I had in Rivals since the early seasons of the game. And even though I had a season and a half of Rust, the game didn't change so drastically that it felt like I was too far behind to catch up. I know it will be a bit late depending on when you watch this video, but if there was ever a time to jump back into Rivals and relearn the game, it would be now before Season 6. And at the time of making this video, we're on the back half of Season 5, with both Gambit being added as a strong strategist and Rogue as a brawler tank. Gambit has definitely taken that slot of being a top 3 choice for strategists, even if it's just everyone wanting to try out the kit. He provides a lot of value between having a reduced healing ability he can cast on enemies, and being able to cast a cure ability on teammates that can counter a lot of stun or CC abilities. And we're just going to have to wait and see how Season 5 pans out in a few weeks. The game also added Times Square as a hangout map for when you're just waiting around to queue up for your next match, as well as an 18v18 team deathmatch mode that, while it is chaotic, it's still fun to drop in from time to time. It's a good place to farm some in-game achievements or to even learn a new character. Just don't take the mode seriously and expect to win. One thing you might have noticed about this video is I haven't really talked that much about Ranked, and that's mainly because I haven't played Ranked often enough throughout the year to give a detailed opinion. As someone who only got up to Diamond 3 before I got burned out, I know players in Gold or below aren't going to agree with what I say, and anyone above Diamond may better understand what I'm saying but won't agree, either because it affects the heroes they play or because they think it would make the game worse. Regardless, I am glad that the game has a hero ban system. Knowing how many heroes were added this year alone, Ranked could have been a lot messier without it. I always keep saying to myself I'm going to play more Ranked this season, so maybe I'll have a stronger opinion in a month or two from now. Alright, so how does Marvel Rivals hold up after a year? Fortunately, as of right now, I can say it is more of the same. The meta is blown wide open, with the exception of a few characters that are just either irrelevant or too niche to work against an open meta. Of course, you have your hard rank meta picks. Let's take a closer look at who's on that list. Emma, Magneto, Groot, Hela, Daredevil, Hawkeye, Star-Lord, Bucky, Invisible Woman, and Gambit, as well as a few others. The meta hasn't revolved around a brand new character every single season, and every character is constantly receiving buffs and nerfs to make them more or less relevant, but not entirely irrelevant. That is, outside of your Black Widows, your Namors, and your Human Torches, who can probably work in certain lobbies, but you're usually better off with anyone else. I'll never say that Marvel Rivals is a perfect game. They've just found a way to make chaos fun and enjoyable. While, sure, a dive comp will never be fun to go against, and there's always a looming threat of flyer meta or something similar showing up each season, they've been able to roll that back. It may take them a season and a half to do it, but it's a lot better than making drastic overcorrections or zero changes and letting the game rot in a meta that's not fun to deal with. Alongside this is how quick the developers can add new abilities to existing characters. We've seen other games be very cautious of reworking characters and trying not to make any changes other than the damage or cooldown of an ability. In Rivals, it happens every single season. Most of this is because of the seasonal team-ups. We've seen players go out of their way to use the characters needed even if one of them is not a traditional pick. Team-ups like Hulk, Iron Man and Namor, Moon Knight and Cloak and Dagger, Magneto and Scarlet Witch, and so on. While not all of these team-ups are worth using in Ranked, it does keep the unranked mode interesting. We also see changes to character kits in just about every limited time mode. Whether it's turning Venom into the size of a building in the Ultron LTM, or having Blade stuck in a never-ending spin cycle in the Zombies mode. And now we have 3 more brand new abilities made just for Jeff for his Winter LTM. In a world where every game is trying so hard to make the default character's kit work and avoid doing any sort of rework, Rivals does the opposite. This will have good and bad results. It's not always going to be great, but it's worked out this year. So long as the developers can keep this kind of imperfect balancing act going, while adding new characters and abilities, Rivals is going to be fun for a long time. I can see though, if you play this game daily and you're constantly grinding for rank, you may not hold the same opinion. Let me know what do you think is holding this game back or what is ruining your ranked experience. And a video like this can't end without going through some negatives. An obvious negative is the matchmaking. While it does give you easy matches to start, the game also does a quick 180 and put you in matches against Celestials in quick play, while you're left with a team of Golds and Plats that are all learning new characters. It's not to say you have to play your best character or role in quick play or even expect to go on a win streak, but being on the wrong end of a blowout again and again and again and again and again and again can really get on your nerves. And then instead of the game giving you an easier match, it just throws you in a match against bots, and disguises those bots with regular usernames. It's been an issue since launch, and it seems like nothing's ever going to be done about it. Another con would be the resource rumble mode. Just throw it in the trash and call it a day. I've lost matches because my team lost the objective while dominating the rest of the match. It doesn't make any sense, and I don't care to understand it. And by far, the biggest problem Rivals has to find a better answer for are the support alts and alt farming. Support ults have always been strong, and it normally requires multiple damage-based ults to try and counter one support ult, or have a mirror match of supports who always use their ults one after another. I think with the addition of Gambit and the introduction of reduced healing, this is slowly changing how effective support ults will be in the near future. Next would be the LTMs to an extent. Like I mentioned with Ultron's digital dual grounds and the zombies mode, they're not always balanced enough to make you use a little bit of everything. Instead, it's typically better to have a specialty build and keep buying the same few cards over and over again, hoping you luck out and get enough of those cards to win you your game. On the surface, they are fun. They just lack a little extra bit of depth that could really set them apart. Of course, there are limited time modes, and I'm not expecting a full-fledged minigame. But I would like to see an LTM like Dual Grounds stick around and be reworked and adjusted over time. I can't really call this next part a negative. This is more of how will rivals continue to change in the future? When will the game become so quick and chaotic that it will drive players away? How many updates will it take for rivals to no longer feel like the same game? I'm always asking this question every time I see a trailer for a new character. Rivals is a very frantic and fast-paced game as is. The developers have to keep adding new characters and abilities, which means the game will have more problems that need to be solved. For now, I'm willing to say Rivals is in a great spot overall. The tweaks and changes that need to happen aren't so drastic that it can never be fixed. Though, they do need to figure out how to keep the game from being an alt fest towards the higher ranked lobbies. And by the track record the devs have made this year, it seems like they're not only willing to try and fix these problems, but also continue to have the game evolve and change over time. Maybe not to the point where it feels like a completely different game, or to the point where they're ever going to answer the alt problem, but just enough to where you may want to learn a new hero just in case the meta starts to shift. That's been my overall experience with Marvel Rivals this year. It did have a low point, but it bounced back, and now it feels very similar to how it did at the start of the year. I know there are additional things they added like reduced healing, but I'm talking about more along the lines of the flow of each match. If you were a strong frontline tank main at the start of this year, you're still just as strong today, and you even have another hero to choose from. Everyone's kits work mostly in the same way as they did when they first released, just some now have overshield or some other passive or buff to go with it. So long as the developers can continue to find that magic and keep the game feeling similar to how it does, I'll keep checking in every week and play the game and earn some rewards. Eventually, I'll make a grind for rank and see how far I can go. Let me know how the first year of Marvel Rivals has been for you, and if you feel the same way, or if you dropped out of playing the game and never gave it a second chance. It'll be interesting to see how different each other's experience has been with this game. Until then, I am Mr. Rain, and I'll see you next time.